Previously, the low-cost sailor.
That flag definitely needs to be changed. But you went and put up the Cantabria flag, man. That it wasn't acceptable that we had to replace the one from Spain and put in one that wasn't broken.
I'll tell you this in more detail later, because this is quite a story. Today we're going to save an uncountable amount of money on unnecessary certifications, roadworthiness inspections of questionable usefulness, naval architects' plans, and poorly justified and excessive fines, not to mention the hours of bureaucracy we're going to save. Today we're going to change the flag on our boat. Well, to be a bit more accurate, the ensign.
NSYNC, the musical group?
No, the ensign. A ship's flags, the country it comes from shown as a flag, are called the ensign, the port of registry ensign. Greetings, sailors, and welcome to a new episode of The Low-Cost Sailor. Today, we'll see how straightforward it can be to change our boat's flag, the country of registration, to another country with regulations that are a bit more reasonable than Spain's. Poland?
Poland. But what do you actually know about Poland?
In 25, what do you really know about my country, honestly? I'm the ambassador of Russia. Well, I mean, of Poland.
Could you please repeat the question for me? What do you actually know about my country, Poland?
Poland.
Well, Poland is a country where genuinely wonderful people live, and it's had a few minor issues with politics over the years, and I honestly don't really know very much more than that. But I want peace in the world. No, man, no, I'm telling you, I know a lot of things about Poland. Just so you can see, it's the 9th largest country in Europe. It was the very first country in Europe to draft a constitution back in 1791. It has disappeared and then been rebuilt as a nation many times throughout its history. It was undoubtedly the country that suffered the most from the Nazi Holocaust, with 6 million people killed. Free university in Poland. It has 16 castles, including the largest one in the world, Malbork Castle. It also has 14 sites that are officially recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. A Polish man, Julius Fromm, was the inventor of latex condoms. It has had truly great windsurfing champions. And of course, it will always remain in our memory. Eurovision 2014, that's exactly when they truly won me over completely.
Eurovision 2014, what a ripoff. How they robbed Poland. They robbed us there. Terrible.
I'm telling you, we Poles truly should have won. Well, anyway, this is about the Polish flag registration, and above all, about why give up the Spanish flag registration to sail. So the first thing I dare to tell you is what my reasons are not. It's not because I don't like having the Spanish flag flying on my boat. In fact, it's made me very sad to have to change it. It's not to save on taxes, since the transfer taxes, VAT, the signaling fees, and all those things still have to be paid all the same. And it's definitely not to save on safety or on safety equipment, but rather quite the opposite. Quite the opposite, because the person who is most interested in my boat being safe is me. And the Spanish regulations, which are written by the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine and are much more suited to large commercial merchant ships than to our small recreational boats, make us waste both time and money on many things of rather questionable usefulness, and don't allow us to install other things because they aren't officially approved by them. Sure, meaning because the manufacturer hasn't actually been by their place to pay them. So yes, there are quite a few reasons that have led me to change my flag, and among those reasons is the inspection. I'm not going to deny it. That was the trigger, because it seems more like a scam to me than something truly useful. And with the day to have to go through it again coming up, I've decided to invest that money in changing the flag. And it's not that my boat isn't in condition to pass it. I'm sure I would have passed it without any problems, but in the end there's so much variety among the inspection companies that you can hire a professional who's really worth it and who will actually take a real look at it for you. That's what I did the last time. Or you can pay someone who will just sign the paper for you and stamp it. But even with a professional, like what happened to me last time, what will really matter to him and to the civil guard, no doubt, is the paperwork. The last time, I found that my radio with digital selective calling wasn't properly registered in the paperwork, and that I needed to get an MMSI. And even though my radio was perfectly registrable, I still needed to have a GPS properly connected. But the worst part is that I had a GPS connected and it was working fine. But But since it still wasn't in the paperwork, and my Raymarine chart plotter, which was approved back then, stopped renewing its approval because it was an older model, it wasn't valid, meaning 5 years ago it was valid, and now it isn't. And like I'm telling you, it's not that it didn't work, or that the way it worked had changed, it's just that they simply didn't renew the certification, and that's when they start squeezing money out of you. Buy a GPS that's approved for the radio, not just anyone with a CE mark. What is that CE mark anyway? It's not good for anything. It has to be on the list of equipment approved by the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine, and if you look for the cheapest one on that list, it has the same functions as a €20 one from AliExpress. But of course you have to pay €90 for it, because on top of that it needs an invoice and an installation certificate from an approved installer, which can't be me since I must not know much about this, and none of my fellow telecommunications engineers are acceptable either. That said, they can absolutely offer you that you simply keep the GPS in a drawer, leave the one you have installed, and he'll give you the installation certificate, since in the end the only thing they're going to look at is the paperwork. And that's just one example, because then they start asking you for things like paper charts, as if paper doesn't get ruined by water, that you fill your boat with gunpowder with rockets and flares, things that technology in nautical safety has long since surpassed with much more effective electronic means. And of course, if your boat doesn't have the CE marking, it's already being discriminated against. Because whatever the shipyard said or your boat's design, none of that counts anymore. And they can ask for a naval engineer's project for anything you want to do. Change the engine, naval engineer. Change the navigation area, naval engineer. The most curious thing is that for this, the CE marking is essential. But for a radio, a GPS is not enough. Anyway, inconsistencies from our beloved Directorate General of the Merchant Marine. The worst thing right now is that we won't be able to get rid of the part about safety equipment for sailing under 12 miles, and it really looks like we're going to have to swallow it, because with some very slight relaxation measures they included in the latest decree law, they took advantage and truly did us dirty, forcing any vessel, regardless of its flag, that could be linked to a citizen with Spanish nationality or residency to comply with exactly the same safety requirements as one flying the Spanish flag. Something that of course the nautical associations have already appealed, and that in every respect goes against international law, since besides, the safety equipment isn't the skipper's, it belongs to the vessel. And let me also not forget that they have also set fines that are, in every respect, clearly disproportionate. For example, mind you, $2,000 for not having the boat's instruction manual. Imagine the Guardia Civil pulls you over and gives you a €2,000 fine in the car if you don't have the owner's manual, or imagine it on a boat that's 50 years old, 70 years old. Where are you going to get the owner's manual from? Some old parchments or something?
An incunabulum there.
The only thing you really have to do is, since what they're asking you for is on paper, you can take basically any book, soak it thoroughly in water, take it out, and that way it looks like it's deteriorated over the years. €2,000. Anyway, some decrees and regulations clearly written by naval engineers and technicians from the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine, who, as they themselves say, don't own a boat and never have, but they've wanted to draft them by consulting and listening to the nautical business associations, the ones who profit from the restrictions, of course, instead of the boaters' associations, those of us who day in and day out live the reality of owning a boat. In the end, it's a real scourge for DIY enthusiasts and for innovation itself, because anything they don't know about and haven't approved can't be carried, and neither can anything that doesn't come with a certificate from an approved installer, even though, when it comes down to it, tinkering and doing things on your own boat gives you knowledge about it, which I'm convinced is the most valuable safety measure you can have at sea. Well, I'm not going to start ranting like a madman either, because I'm sure that at the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine there are plenty of people with very good intentions, but they live a reality of commercial vessels that looks nothing like that of recreational boaters. And why Poland exactly?
Can I give you an overview?
Yes, but setting aside how appealing their participation in the 2014 Eurovision Song Contest was, it's because it's a European country with reasonable legislation for recreational boating that is actually very similar to that of the other civilized European countries where recreational boating thrives and is considered a sporting hobby and not an elitist luxury like in Spain, which in the end could just as well have been any other European country like Norway, Sweden, Finland, or our own neighbor France. Recreational boating is truly a success because the legislation is specifically tailored to support it, and because they place their trust in individual responsibility rather than in government control. Let's not forget that responsibility means that if you screw up, you pay for it. And you really pay for it too. It's not let's mess with everyone just in case, so that if there's some reckless idiot among them, then they're all screwed. The worst part is that if there's a reckless person among them, it's exactly the one who cares least about ITB regulations and having everything in order. But specifically Poland, with regulations very similar to those of those other countries, has been my preferred choice because it allows essentially anyone to register a vessel without needing to be a Polish citizen or to have their residence formally established there, even if they are not a European citizen. What are the real advantages? It's an official flag registry of a European country, valid worldwide. A registration does not expire. It's even recognized by the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine. What choice did they really have left? Of course, you can obtain a completely valid Polish MMSI. You don't have to pass the ITB. They proposed including it in the latest decree law along with the mandatory safety equipment, but they didn't manage to. Maybe too many things against the law for a single decree. There are no navigation zones. This is the main advantage and the main reason for me to be able to go beyond 12 miles with my boat, which is in the ocean category, but it's hard to get it cleared for this purpose without the CE marking and without spending a lot of money to obtain it. Another advantage is that the safety equipment only needs CE marking and a life raft isn't required. Even though within 12 nautical miles we'll still have to carry Spanish safety equipment for now, at least we'll save on the raft, which if you sail offshore, you should be carrying anyway. And the EPIRB, and the main advantage of all, being able to sail with the peace of mind of feeling that you are the one responsible for your boat and your safety, because at the end of the day, you're the one most interested in everything being in good condition so you can enjoy it with peace of mind. Well then, once I was convinced that I wanted to switch to the Polish flag, the time comes to do it. How simple or complicated is it? Well, if it were like in Spain, we'd practically have to go to Poland, settle in there, and expect to have to show up countless times with paperwork and inspections. But no, actually it's very simple, and you could even do it yourself since the whole process is done online, far removed from Spain's complexities and timelines. Well, the only thing is that you need to know Polish, and mine is a little bit rusty. Aside from a couple of swear words that my Polish coworker taught me, I don't really understand a thing. And it's also a requirement to provide documentation translated into Polish. So to do it, I decided to look for a specialized and affordable consulting service. And by searching through the Taberna de Puerto forums, I found the cheapest trustworthy one, A Bandera tu Barcoya. And I got in touch with them, and it didn't take long before I was talking on the phone with Stefan from Nautica Vegamar in Alicante, who are the ones behind that website. And seeing that there's truly someone behind it, someone open to contacting you, explaining things to you, and helping you, gives a lot of confidence. And my phone conversations with Stefan, I'm very far from Alicante, gave me the confidence that they could handle it for me and that it was a formality they could make easy for me quickly and affordably. In fact, taking advantage of my relative reputation in the boating world, well, the channels, and after an arduous negotiation process, I managed to get them to give a discount to those of you who do it and say you're coming on my behalf. So the price, for example, as of today, instead of the 350 euros of the official price on their website, will come out to around 280 for you if you say you're coming from us, of course. We don't earn anything from this, I'm telling you. The truth is the process has been really quick. Without a doubt, the most complicated part of all this is getting the Spanish flag deregistration, but in the end I even did that entirely online. Maybe because I did it online, well, since everything is recorded, that's why I managed to do it so quickly. And the first thing I did was request the cancellation of the Spanish flag through the online portal of the ship registry. Stefan himself provided me with the URL, which you also have in the video description, as always. That said, to do it online, you'll need an electronic certificate to identify yourselves. The very first thing you should do is to pay the applicable fee for the Register of Ships and Shipping Companies using Form 790, Code 25, under the cancellation concept for a total amount of 19.08 euros. I forgot to do it, and it took me a bit longer because I had to do it as an appeal, since they contacted me and told me, hey, you haven't paid the fee. The payment process is fairly simple to complete online, as you can see, and you will almost certainly need to pay the minimum amount, which is $19.08. If you have a Spanish MMSI, I recommend that you go ahead and directly fill out the responsible declaration stating that you have deprogrammed the MMSI. I'm also leaving the form in the video description. And the rest is simply to go to the Maritime Registry URL. First, download and fill out the application form that's under the paper-based procedure. With Adobe PDF Reader, you'll be able to fill it out and save it easily. The important boxes to check are that this is a deregistration due to a permanent change of flag, and that you want notifications by electronic means. This will make the process much faster. You'll need to fill in your vessel's details, and then the only remaining information you'll have to enter will be the port where the flag change will be carried out. With Stefan always, Gdynia or Gdynia. I believe it's called Gdynia, along with the date. I put the same day since it was being deregistered on that exact day. And the destination country, Poland. You sign it, which you can do with Acrobat Reader itself or by printing it out, signing it and scanning it, and then you'll have the form filled out. With all of that, you can take a trip over to your maritime captaincy, or simply do it by using the Start Electronic Processing button, identifying yourself with the user certificate you normally use for your procedures with the administration, and then filling in your information. Fill in the application details indicating it's a deregistration request due to a flag change. Choose the maritime captaincy you want to send the paperwork to. I chose Santander because it's the local one here, and I've seen they handle things efficiently. State that you are requesting the deregistration according to the form you are attaching and that what you are requesting is permanent deregistration. Now it is time to attach the application form as I did, and if you want to be quick, the proof of payment of the fee and the responsible declaration that the radio has been deprogrammed. Finally, review all the information carefully and click Sign and Submit to send in the application. Don't worry too much. If you make a mistake, they'll send you a notice and you'll be able to correct it. I did quite a lot of things wrong the first time. With the receipt for the cancellation request, you can go ahead and start the paperwork with Stefan. You'll send him the documents that the cancellation request receipt asks for, and within a few days, in my case it was just a matter of hours, you'll have your provisional documentation. With the provisional documentation, you can already sail, and in a few weeks, you'll receive the final documentation, which is this really cute little card that's designed to be on a boat and withstand the elements. Unlike my old documentation, which is a whole bunch of papers, very well designed so they don't get ruined by humidity.
You're telling me? Are you telling me this? Instead of a whole bunch of papers, big papers too. And on top of that, in Poland the documentation is that same card you showed me, which is
made of plastic, durable plastic.
But these Poles really are geniuses. I mean, that's also true. Who would have ever thought that on a boat, all the paperwork would be on one durable plastic card?
Why? Because the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine? How would these papers possibly not fit on a boat, and how could they not have them? They imagine a filing cabinet on a supertanker, where you have all your paperwork properly filed away, and they don't imagine that there are small boats without a cabin that still have the very same obligation to carry the documentation. Even a really big Zodiac still has to carry the paperwork. And where does a scuba diving Zodiac like that actually keep it? That way, it doesn't get ruined.
These Poles, what clever brains they've got, my goodness.
Absolutely. Just remember that you'll need to send the updated paperwork to your insurance company. Mine was with Fiat C. I'm not even sure how it's pronounced. And I emailed them the updated paperwork, and without paying anything extra, they sent me back the insurance documents that were already updated. However, in order to legally carry out the change of flag, you must first receive authorization from the Harbor Master's office. Once they authorize you to proceed with the deregistration, you will then be able to deregister officially, and you will need to notify them of when the deregistration takes effect and in which port. With that done, they'll consider it officially recorded, and then, after a few days, they'll send you another notice with the entry in the Maritime Register, stating that you've already been formally deregistered. With the provisional documentation, you can now complete the change of registration on the boat. The first and saddest thing was taking down my battered but beloved Spanish flag, but with the honors it deserves. Doing the honors isn't strictly mandatory, but it does look good, I'm not going to lie. It made me sad, and also a little scared and uncertain. In fact, I'm going to keep this battered old flag as a souvenir. Second, remove the boat's Spanish registration number, because on the sides, in the exact same spot where that registration number used to be, that's exactly where you need to place the vessel's name. Then, once you've already put the vessel's name on both sides at the bow, you'll need to add, right next to the boat's name, which you'll already have on the stern, the Polish registration number and the port of registry, which, for those of you who register with Stefan, will always be Gdynia, and I think that's how it's pronounced now. And lastly, hoist your Polish flag, or honestly, one from Cantabria can also do the trick. I bought the official Polish ensign on AliExpress. Very inexpensive, although I also have to say it's not exactly very discreet. And that's basically it. You can sail freely now. Whether you're flying a Spanish, Polish, or French flag, sailing is really exactly the same. Just keep in mind that if you don't want to run into any problems, the safety equipment they might require from you will be at most whatever is required for Navigation Zone 4, and that will only ever happen to you when you're in Spain. Aside from that, the dangers, joys, and uncertainties that await us out at sea are basically the same. So make sure you equip your boats properly, keep them in good and seaworthy condition, and try to get to know your own boats as thoroughly as possible, because once you get a few miles away from the coast, you're very much on your own, and the closest help you're going to have is the help you can provide for yourself. That's exactly why you really shouldn't skimp on safety equipment, but with the peace of mind that you won't have to go and pay up at the counter of the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine, which is such a pain in the ass, with
what you save, you can buy more safety gear. Wouldn't that be better?
Is that what it is? The truth is, it's a shame. Being forced to resort to measures like changing the flag simply to come under a more reasonable maritime law, and being forced to flee from the tyranny of the General Directorate of the Merchant Marine.
Our friends.
I'm sending you a kiss. I would have genuinely liked to be able to continue sailing under the Spanish flag, but the truth is that this is recreational boating, and the limits have to remain at reasonable levels, and each of us has to be the main guarantor of our boat's safety. Not have it be the government going after us to ask for paperwork, for approvals, and for certificates. I think a lot of us should start switching to the Polish flag. Not to make the change itself, or simply so that we're all operating under this much more reasonable set of regulations, but rather so that the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine finally wakes up and things actually change. But make real genuine changes. Don't make moves that are as subtle as the ones you've made on the last few occasions, and don't make moves that try to go after those of us who switch flags, because that really does go against international law.
It is simply that now you have become a fugitive.
I'm basically a fugitive from the law. Well, in my country, Poland, no. It's surprising that it's easier, and it takes you less time. Like in my case, it's easier to change a vessel's flag than to pass the ITB. The requirements are fewer. And that's what can be. Don't be afraid. The change is very simple. You're going to have a whole lot of advantages, and we're going to keep giving little nudges to the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine so it understands that it has to change its policy. It has to get up to the level of the rest of Europe's civilized countries when it comes to nautical regulations. Well, what needs to happen is that the Directorate General of the Merchant Marine stops governing the direction of recreational boating and takes charge of it, commercial boating. Thank you very much for your attention, sailors. I truly hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon to receive notifications each time we publish a new video. You have all the links in the description. You can also visit our website, www.thelowcostsailor.com. See you in a week in a new episode of The Low Cost Sailor.
What a robbery at Eurovision 2014. What a robbery.
They truly earned it. They really should have won.